And at the end of the show, there's an email address. You can send us your tips of information that you uncover, okay? Very, very important. So we're also going to jump on, let's see, we got the news on the last week. News last week from top U.S. intelligence chiefs in Washington warned Americans about an impending terrorist cyber attack that could strike in the next 6 months. While the fear of a major terrorist attack in the U.S. is worth concerning, it wasn't the only revelation from the intelligence hearing that is frightening. National Intelligence Director Dennis C. Blair affirmed that the Obama administration is determining the legality of the Bush-era doctrine, which gives authority to assassinate American citizens without due process if they present a direct terrorist threat to the U.S. and to other Americans. Texas Congressman Ron Paul recently weighed in on the topic.
And this week, I could not believe a headline that said the president was considering the legality of assassinating an American citizen. No, that's true. It's true. He was born in this country, and he's a Muslim, and he's identified to be with people who don't like us. So they want to declare him an enemy combatant, which they can do by, like the Attorney General, the President, oh, he's an enemy combatant, and therefore he has no rights. Now you say, well, yeah, but he's a terrorist. Well, no, he is maybe a suspect, and nothing has been proven, and he might be a bad guy. But is that the way you take care of bad guys, talking in the White House about assassinating this guy? I mean, what happens if conditions get really bad and we start talking to each other about some of the terrible things that Washington, D.C. is going to us? Are we going to be enemy combatants?
American Civil Liberties Union attorney Ben Weisner said, "It is alarming to hear that the Obama administration is asserting that the president can authorize the assassination of Americans abroad, even if they are far away from any battlefield and may have never taken up arms against the U.S., but have only been deemed to constitute an unspecified threat." Can you believe this? Yeah, this is actually happening in the United States, and this is absolutely terrifying. So who are the real terrorists these days? I think you need to think about that question. All right, economic news. The U.S. economy grew at the end of 2009. See, there still has been no considerable job hike. Well, the U.S. private sector job losses are shrinking, but the economy is not yet generating enough jobs to really help the unemployment rate, which is now down to 9.7% from 10% this past month. Ryan Sweet, a senior economist with Economy.com, said, "The labor market is inching in the right direction, but the economy is still not generating jobs in numbers that will stabilize the unemployment rate. Small businesses that employ fewer than 50 workers fell by 12,000 in January, while manufacturing jobs dropped by 25,000. The sole job increase were the jobs in producing services. Although the increase wasn't enough to offset any other decline, employment expanded to 38,000. More and more jobs are expected to become available in the upcoming months, but the unemployment rate is expected to linger around 10%. All right, let's jump over to states' rights for a second here. You know, nullification has a rich history in American politics. It is based on the fact that state governments not only have the right to oppose unconstitutional federal laws, but a responsibility to defend its residents from wrongdoings by the federal government. Perhaps the most visible example in recent years are the 14 states, including California, which have nullified federal laws on marijuana use. And in keeping with tradition, 22 states are currently debating a bill known as the Firearms Freedom Act, which, if passed, would limit regulation on guns and ammunition which are created, sold, and maintained within that state. Supporters argue that they should not be subject to federal laws under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Constitution. In 2009, Montana and Tennessee became the first two states to approve that bill. Montana Shooting Sports Association President Gary Marbett said, "We feel very strongly that the federal government has gone way too far in attempting to regulate a lot of activity that occurs only in state. The Montana legislature and governor agreed with us by enacting the MFFA. We welcome the support of many other states that are stepping up to the plate with their own firearms freedom acts." Now, once again, we have exclusive footage from Don't Tread on Me, the movie. In part 2 of our 3-part series, Representative Charles Key talks about the 10th Amendment and what it means to the American people.
I think that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is only a list of things that the government can do. It is not a list of what the people can do. And that's very clear from what the founders, the framers of the Constitution intended. It certainly is not a list of the things that we can do. It may include some of those things, and it does, but it's not a list of the things that we can do. It doesn't establish our rights. It only refers to some of them and says that all others are left to the people, retained to the people of the states. It primarily is a list, if we could call it that, a list of what the federal government is allowed to do. Well, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution it was insisted that the 10th Amendment to the Constitution was included in the Bill of Rights before some of the states would sign on to the Constitution. And the reason that it was insisted is there were delegates to the Constitutional Convention that wanted to ensure that it was very clear that the Constitution was written to limit the government, limit what they could do, and restrict them. So the 10th Amendment states that only the specific powers delegated to the federal government in the Constitution were the only powers that they had, and they had none others. And that's what the 10th Amendment says, is that all powers that haven't been specifically delegated to the federal government are retained by the people of the states.